You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beis Shemesh, Israel, 5785, 2025. This week's Parsha is Parsha Tetzaveh. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "V'ata ha'krei lecha es Aharon achicha." He is commanded to bring to you, to bring close to you, your brother Aharon. The Medrash tells us there's two parts of this Medrash, and I hope to get to a third Medrash which also speaks on this topic. But the first part of the Medrash talks about the feelings of Moshe Rabbeinu as he was told that Aharon is going to be the Kohen, he's going to be the priest. Moshe Rabbeinu actually served as the Kohen Gadol, as the high priest, at the very beginning of the time of the Mishkan. During the Miluim, when the Mishkan was first put up, the last 7 days of Adar, right before the official consecration of the Mishkan on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But he wasn't going to continue in that avoda. And so, the Medrash says that he felt bad about this. Let's see what it says. Hadahu dichsiv. Lulei sarascha shashuoi hazavarati v'anhi. Pasuk tells us, King David says, if not for your Torah, if not for your commandments, this thing that I get to enjoy, this plaything, I would have been lost in my sadness. Just like David HaMelech understood that there's something incredibly powerful about the Torah, that the Torah is greater than anything else. The instructions of Hashem, when I study those instructions, I learn about what it means to have a real relationship with God. And if not for that, I'm lost. The world is lost. Now when Moshe Rabbeinu was told that Aharon, his brother, is going to be the high priest, he felt bad. He felt bad. Why am I not going to be that individual? Why don't I have that merit? Amar lo, Hashem says to him, Torah hoisali u'nesati halacha lulei hu ibarati oilami. The Medrash understands the pasuk of lulei seirascha. If not for the Torah, I would have been lost. To be talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu first. I gave you the Torah. I gave you the Torah, and if not for that, if not for the fact that the Torah was given to you, Moshe Rabbeinu, so I would have had to destroy my world. The world would have been lost. So what Hashem was telling him really was that what's more powerful? To serve in the Beis Hamikdash, to be the Kohen Gadol, that's powerful, that's amazing. But, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash for 2,000 years. But all along we've had the Torah. As long as there is Torah, the world can continue to exist. As long as the commandments of HaKadosh Baruch Hu exist and are studied, and of course we're trying to put it into action, the world continues to exist. So Hashem was consoling him. Moshe Rabbeinu felt bad. I don't get to serve you in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. Hashem says, hold on a second. Don't feel bad. You have something even deeper, even greater. And I was thinking as I read this, what's the center of the Mishkan? What's the center of the Beis Hamikdash? What's in the Holy of Holies? That Aharon is only allowed to go there once a year on Yom Kippur. What's inside of the Holy of Holies is the Aron HaBris. It's the ark which contains the Luchos and the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down. So Moshe Rabbeinu, in a certain sense, is there inside of the Holy of Holies. His book, the book that he wrote, that Hashem communicated through him, is right there inside of the Holy of Holies. So Hashem was saying to him, you have something even deeper. You have something even greater. It says the Medrash, Mashal l'chacham shnato krevasei, v'asasayim yud shana v'layolda. The Medrash says a mashal, an analogy which is a little hard to relate to today, but let's understand this. There was a man, he married a cousin of his, meaning somebody very close, someone very beloved, and they were married for 10 years and they didn't have children. Amar la bakshi li isha. So he says to her, I want to make a request of you to marry somebody else. I'm going to still be married to you. I'd like to have a second wife. Amar la yachol ani litol chutz mir shusech el sheis mevakeshan v'sanusech. So the husband, when he says this, that he wants to marry a second wife, he tells her that really I could have married a second wife without asking you. But I'm asking you because I want you to understand what it means, humility. That's the words. I saw in the Meforshim what it means to say is that the husband was promising his first wife that whoever the second wife may be, he's marrying her because he wants to have children, and he didn't have children from her. Right? And think about Moshe Rabbeinu. His kids didn't end up being great. Aharon HaKohen's kids did end up being great. That's what the Meforshim point out. So Hashem is saying to Moshe, who's his, as it were, his first wife, you're not going to have kids, but I want to tell you something. When I marry the second wife, this guy is saying in the analogy, when I marry the second wife, you are going to be the one who's in charge. Who's going to be the more chashuv wife. You're always going to be the more important one. The second wife is going to be beholden to you. Beholden to you. This is analogous to what Hashem says to Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I want you to bring Aharon close. I want you to be the one to appoint him. Hashem could have appointed him without that, right? Aharon was a Bal Ruach HaKodesh. Aharon had prophecy, he had the ability to prophesy. And Hashem could have told him, without discussing it with Moshe Rabbeinu, as it were. But Hashem, by asking Moshe Rabbeinu to appoint Aharon, what he was saying was that you are going to be greater than him. He's going to be beholden to you. The high priest is beholden to Moshe Rabbeinu. What does it mean? It means that, as we said before, the Torah which is representative of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he brought into the Kodesh HaKadosh and the Holy of Holies, that Torah is the source of the prophecy, right? We find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Hashem speaks through the Urim V'Tumim, through the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. He speaks through that. It's on the chest of Aharon, and the letters light up and communicate. But what's the power of it? The power of it comes from Moshe. It comes from the Torah, from the teachings. So in a certain way, Moshe is like the root of everything. Even though he himself is not going to have children who continue in his way, it's going to be passed over to Yehoshua, but the power that comes through him is going to light up Aharon, literally. It's going to light up the high priest, and it's going to light up his children, and it's going to come down through Aharon. So that's the idea behind Hakreve Lecha. Mitoich B'nei Yisrael. Medrash says something amazing. Okay, the second part of the pasuk. So that's the first teaching. The second part of the pasuk says, "Mitoich b'nei Yisrael," you are to choose him from amidst the children of Israel. Why does the pasuk say this? Why does it say "Mitoich b'nei Yisrael," from amidst the children of Israel? So the Medrash tells us a few places, and actually, hopefully, we should get to the second Medrash also, which says even more. But we find a number of places where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where Hashem, where God chooses, whittles down, chooses one thing from amongst many, and from that one, chooses from within that. For example, Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'Eretz Yisrael. Hashem created the entire world, and He chooses one place to be precious to Him. One place that has such kedusha, has such holiness, that it's the only place in the world that you can do trumas and maasros. Much of the Torah is only in Israel. Guys, time to come home. Only in Israel. Trumas and maasros, all the mitzvahs atuliyas ba'aretz, Shemitah, Yovel, all the karbanos, only in the Beis Hamikdash, only in Yerushalayim, that's what we're going to see. So Hashem had the whole world. He whittles it down. He chooses to make His kedusha more apparent, more manifest in Israel. Eretz Yisrael bachar Beis Hamikdash, and then He whittles it down further. It skips here Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, but Jerusalem has a more concentrated level of holiness, and the Beis Hamikdash has an even more concentrated level, the Holy Temple. And then when Beis Hamikdash lebachar ela bebeis kodshei hakodeshim, where does Hashem choose? What's the most sanctified place in the entire world. It's inside of the Holy of Holies, which, of course, as we said, inside of there is the Aharon Habris, has the Torah inside of it. So the Torah is the most rarefied holiness. Kach bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Yisrael. In a similar way, Hashem created all of the nations of the world. But He chose Am Yisrael. They have 7 mitzvahs. They have an obligation to have a relationship with God. But the Jewish people's relationship is more rarefied. 613 commandments. And what happens? Am Yisrael bachar el shevet Levi. And God wills it down further and chooses for Himself a group of people called the tribe of Levi. And they're going to be the ones who completely dedicate their lives to Hashem. Serve in the Beis Hamikdash. And then what does Hashem do? Mishevet Levi bachar. Yes. Mishevet Levi bachar Aharon. Shenamar bachar asim mikol shiftei Yisrael. And Hashem wheels it down further until He gets to the Kohanim, the children of Aharon. I'm adding here. He whittles it down to the children of Aharon as being the priests, and then He whittles it down further to having the high priest. And as it goes from level to level, there's an even deeper level of consecration, of holiness, of kedusha. And there's an even deeper level of connection. And there's an even deeper level of service that the Kohen Gadol does for all of Am Yisrael. He brings about atonement inside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. That love that Hashem shows for Am Yisrael, He channels it. He channels that love, that forgiveness to the Jewish people. And the Kohanim also do that through the karbanos, the sacrifices. They also are involved in channeling it to the rest. Like it spreads out to the whole world through the whittling down. Everything is whittled down to the center. And then it goes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends His shefa from the top back down out through everyone. The Kohanim bring the karbanos, bring about atonement for the Jewish people. They give blessings to the Jewish people. The Levites, they sing their songs, which arouse the Jewish people to tshuva, etc. So it funnels down, and then it funnels back. Truma letzad, v'maisa letzad. Interestingly, the Medrash points out that there was a whittling down even further. There was a whittling down, like we find that when a person has, in Eretz Yisrael, even today we have this mitzvah, midrabanan. A person has fruits, they pick them off the tree, there's an obligation to take trumas and meisters. I have a lemon tree in my backyard, and you take down the lemons, before you eat it, you have to take off a tithe. There's a tithe for the Levites, and there's a further tithe for the Kohanim, for the priests. But you see, it gets whittled down, The pasuk indicates in the children of Aharon that there was a difference between the 2 older sons and the 2 younger sons. The older sons ended up passing away on the day of the Akamas HaMishkan, the day that the Mishkan was established. And who was left was Elazar and Itamar. They ended up being the forefathers of all the Kohanim, all the priests who are alive today. So there was a whittling down within the family of Aharon. Praiseworthy is the one who is chosen, the one who gets to live inside of the Mishkan, inside of that place of holiness. So it's an amazing thing. So I want to point out, there's a famous Rambam, and Rambam says, right? It's not just the tribe of Levi that has the ability to access a deeper kedusha, a deeper holiness, a deeper connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anybody in the entire world doesn't seem to distinguish between Jews and non-Jews even. Anybody who comes from the world who wants to be mekadesh himself, to sanctify himself, can choose that, can walk into the Beis Medrash, can access the Moshe Rabbeinu aspect, which is really at the root. You want to have a real relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, anybody can have that. Yes, the Kohanim have a certain natural predisposition to it, but really anybody can access it. So that's the first part of what I wanted to say. Bottom line, we have Moshe Rabbeinu, in a certain way, is the root of everything, where all of the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes from. Aharon is an extension of that. It spreads out from him to his kids, to Levi'im, to the rest of Am Yisrael. And there's a whittling down. There's a whittling down in the world, the whole world, down to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, down to Jerusalem, down to Beis Hamikdash, to the temple, down to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And in a similar way, in Am Yisrael, down to the Levi'im, the whole world, down to Am Yisrael, down to Levi'im, down to the Kohanim, down to Aharon. Now, I want to share with you another place. There's another medrash which also has this concept of whittling down. And it says an incredible thing. It's very deep, it's very beautiful, and let's see this together. Amar Yehuda Halevi Barab Shalom. We find that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded, this is a medrash in Bamidbar, Parsha Gimel, section Ches. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to count the Jewish people. So the counting for most of the Jewish people was only for those between the ages of 20 and 60. However, when it came to counting the Levi'im, the Levites, there was a commandment to count them, even those who were under 20, all the way down to the age of 1 month old. So the Medrash wants to understand what is the concept here, what is the idea, why do we count them all the way down to the age of only 1 month old? So the Medrash brings the pasuk. It says, Amar David, Hine nachas Hashem banim, sachar pri habaten. The Medrash brings a pasuk in Psalms, chapter 127, verse 3. It says, the inheritance of Hashem, right? And think of the Levi'im. The Levi'im, the pasuk refers to them as the inheritance of Hashem. Hashem hu nachal asam, or Hashem is their inheritance. Right? What is the inheritance of Hashem? Bonim. Hine nachas Hashem bonim. The children who are the inheritance of Hashem, sachar pri habaten. They are the reward of the fruit of the womb. Okay, pasuk needs explanation clearly. What is it talking about? But the basic idea of this pasuk is that when someone is the nachlas Hashem, when someone is dedicated, the life of that person is dedicated completely to serving Hashem. So you can see in their kids, you can see the results of what that life looks like. You want to know who the people are? Look who the kids are. The kids are a result of the chinuch of the parents, of that which was taught to them, of that which was inculcated into them. They started drinking it already. They started drinking this milk of their family, of their parents, of that atmosphere from the age of when they were born. And you can see it much later. It expresses itself and it manifests as the person grows up, as the person comes of age. You can see it. You can see it already. Says the Medrash. What is the idea here? So you see later, there's some kind of connection between something that happens later, the way that the child, the person develops. You can see something about the way things were all the way back towards the beginning of that person's life. There's a chashivus all the way back. You can see later what happened in the beginning. So the Medrash tells us something amazing, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does something unusual. God counts them till their very youngest age, which is not true in regards to all the other tribes. Where do we see this from? We see it even beforehand. Not just in the Midbar when Hashem says to count the Jewish people, but there was a counting earlier, the count of 70. When Yaakov Avinu and the Jewish people came down as 70 souls to Egypt. The Pasuk tells us there were 70 that came down. But if you count up the names and you count up who it's talking about, there's only 69. So the Medrash says, when Yaakov came down to Egypt, Oisa Shah Safar as Banav. Pasuk says, a counting of the children. Nimtzu Kulam Shisha Meshisha. So there were 66 that actually came along with Yaakov. Shenemar kol nefesh shishim v'sheish u'shnei banim shel Yosef harei shishim v'tisha. So we get to 69 by getting to, you add another 3, which is Yosef and his 2 sons who were already in Egypt. So how do you get to the number 70? What's the missing 70th? We find that who's the 70th? It was Yocheved. Yocheved, who was the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. She was conceived already. She was in utero. As they were coming down to Egypt, she was born at the gates of Egypt. But nevertheless, even though the baby is not yet born yet, we still count that baby as the 70th. Yocheved was the daughter of Levi. You see that the Levi'im, the Levites, are counted already from even the youngest age, not yet born. We see there's a concept of counting in their regards. And that goes back to Hashem banim Sachar pri habotem. Those who are connected to God, Yocheved, who's going to have Moshe, who's going to have Aharon, going to have the children who are the leaders of Am Yisrael, who represent Torah, as we said, who represent service of Hashem, who represent connection to Hashem and drawing down God's light down to all of Am Yisrael and all to the entire world. These two, what you're going to see later, you see all the way back at the beginning too. There's a koach, there's something that you see in the end that shows power all the way in the beginning, and then it's counted. It's important. It's something that you can count. It has reality to it. Yeah. That's the concept. So the Medrash says, Lama Hukain, why is it so? Why is it so that we count all the way back to the earliest times when it comes to the tribe of Levi, when it comes to Yocheved herself? This tribe is more beloved, or I would say more connected, and anybody can choose to be like that, as we said. But naturally the predisposition is to be more connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. From all of the tribes, this was the most chosen tribe. Brings the pasuk we just quoted in the other medrash, which says that from all of the tribes of Israel, I chose the Kohanim, the priests. We find this idea in other places as well. We find numerous times Hashem made a plethora of different things, and then He chose from amongst that number, He chose one thing out of them. Hashem created the week, 7 days, but He whittled it down and chose Shabbos. That's the holiest day. Barashanim, God created the years. There are cycles of years, 7 years of the Shemitah cycle. He chose one of those years to be even more precious, more holy, more consecrated. Barashvuos, Kadosh Baruch Hu created, besides for the 7-year cycle, there's multiple 7-year cycles, 7 times 7. And He chose another year out of those 50 years, which is called Yovel. Hashem created all of the lands in the world. He chose one of them, and that's the land of Israel. Hashem looks at this land much more. He's more connected to this land. Hashem calls it His land. And the Medrash goes on to say a number of different things. God created all the nations, but He chose to centralize His kedusha, the holiness, the natural predisposition to relationship with Him in the people of Israel. He created the different tribes within the people of Israel. He chose one of them, which is the tribe of Levi. God chose the people of the Levites from amongst all of them. Lefichach amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what Hashem says. LeMoshe, sheyitkidei ben chodesh mipnei shu mechaber ben yoser. That's why he counts them from 1 month. It just goes on to say, why do we wait till 1 month? I'm not going to get into that. But the idea here is, the depth of it is, the deep idea here is that you see that there's a greater reality, there's a greater existence. The thing is more real the more it's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You might not see it till later. It might take time to develop. Pasuk says in Tehillim, the pasuk afterwards talks about Kechitzi miyad gibor. You know, when the mighty man shoots an arrow, or in today's parlance, if a person is a sharpshooter, you can see from the results. You don't think that the arrow itself just happened to kill somebody or just happened to hit the target. You know that someone who has incredible skill is the one who shot that arrow. And it's the same thing. If you see that there's a greater kedusha later, there's a greater holiness later, it emphasizes and brings to light the fact that originally there was so much kedusha. It started already in the womb. It started already. Yocheved was the mother of the future Levites, the future Kohanim priests. And it goes back all the way. So it goes in both directions. The lesson that, as I understand it for me, is that there's an incredible investment in my kids. You see, Baruch Hashem, my kids we have a range. My oldest is turning 22. My youngest is 2. But as the person develops, you start to see who the person is. You start to see that your investment, you know what your investment looked like because you know what the results were. And it's an incredible lesson, but it all comes down to the first thing that we said, which is that Moshe Rabbeinu, his Torah, his direction, that which he received directly from Hashem, which is going to be given over to Aharon, which is going to be given over to the teachers, the Levites, to spread out and share with all of Am Yisrael. That connection starts. It starts the incredible expression of the Torah in all of Am Yisrael as we keep the Torah. When Am Yisrael is keeping the Torah properly, it's rooted in that first thought, that first person who says, I'm going to be somebody who is really connected, who really cares about the will of Hashem. And I'm going to give that over to my kids. And my kids will give it over to their kids. And that's how Am Yisrael becomes the people we're supposed to be. We become those people because we realize where it starts and where it ends. It says in Sefer Yetzirah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not Reisha b'Seifa v'Seifa b'Reisha. The beginning is embedded in the end, and the end is embedded in the beginning. We also say it, Seif Masa b'Machshav Tchila v'Seyan Shamis. The end thought is in the original. The end action is in the original thought. It's so important to know that what we're doing today is going to have a ripple effect. It's going to create an incredible reality if we attach ourselves originally to Hashem and His will. So then we and our children and our children's children and all of the Jewish people will be a manifestation of that will of Hashem. I want to bless you. I ask you to bless me that we should be able to take this to heart. We should connect ourselves all the way into the root, into the Torah, into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we should be able to merit to see how these blessings ripple out from us. This connection ripples out from us to all the world around us. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.